STEM fans, are you ready? Let's hear it for the world-class NASA STEM Stars team. From NASA centers across the country, we present Dakota Tyler, Lindsey Jacobson, Jillian Reedon, Andrew Olson, and Tina Beck.
Hello and welcome to this week's NASA STEM Stars. Boy, do we have a great show prepared for you today. We have a huge, awesome panel of interns to introduce you to. I'm Jen Hudgens, and I'm coming to you from the Kennedy Space Center. And NASA STEM Stars is a great way for us to get to know people that work at NASA and all the great backgrounds and careers and different types of things that you can get involved with at NASA. So before we get started, I want to let you all know that if you have any questions for our panelists today, you can drop your questions into the chat box and also share out on our hashtag NextGenSTEM. And we are excited to get started. And before I introduce our panelists, I do have a video that we're going to get started with to kind of give you an idea of who we're going to be talking to today and what the intern program is about at NASA. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with that video. Thanks.
Hey, my name is Dakota Tyler.
Hi, my name is Tina Beck.
My name is Jillian.
My name is Lindsey Jacobson.
This summer, I'm working virtually as an intern for NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C.
This summer has been like no other. With the COVID-19 virus spreading across the world, most NASA employees work from home. The same goes for interns. Interns usually get to work at one of the 10 center campuses, but not this year. Luckily, most work is digital these days. Interns are still contributing to NASA's James Webb Space Telescope in wonderful and enriching ways.
So today I'm going to go ahead and give you a tour of NASA Mary Jackson headquarters. Okay, so it's actually a guest bedroom, but this summer, for me, it's NASA headquarters. I'm focusing on star formation with JWST. So of course I've got about 20 articles open right now, studying the forefront of science in star formation.
I'm focusing on the science goal called first light and reionization. And the basics of what that means is when light reaches us from the beginning of the universe, it's really old light, and so it's really hard to see. And what James Webb can do is it can actually see that light a lot better than other telescopes that we've sent out in the past.
Internships reflect the diverse types of jobs at NASA, since it takes a tremendous amount of effort to get anything into space.
I'm focusing on the risks of the mission. This means taking information from many places like spreadsheets, databases, and technical reports, picking the important information out and condensing it into one place where anyone can go in and track the risk's life from conception to mitigation.
For my project, I'm tracking the logic behind each accepted technical risk in the risk database. This involves looking at mitigation strategies and trade-offs that may have been made while accepting technical risks.
Despite the distance, internships make an important difference to the mission and to the careers of students and recent grads.
It gave me the chance to meet a lot of people in the field and a lot of scientists at NASA in general and get to know their stories. I recently graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a degree in physics. And this fall, I'll be headed to grad school to study exoplanets. And exoplanets is actually what I'm working on JWST with right now.
I'm really, really excited to be able to be building just kind of a roadmap of past, present, future, what we used to know, what we want to know about the infrared light that is reaching us from the beginning of the universe.
All right. What an awesome video. So as you can see, we've got an intern panel that's working at NASA with the James Webb Space Telescope. So from the video, you can see interning right now looks a little bit different at NASA because of the pandemic that's going on, but there is still great work going on, and you can apply for internships for spring, fall, and summer. So please don't hesitate if you're a high school student or if you're a student in college and you're interested in internships, we are still having interns at NASA, even though they may be working from home, they're still doing brilliant work. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first panelist today. Her name is Lindsey. So welcome, Lindsey, to the show. I really want you to share what you've been doing at NASA, but first, can you tell us a bit about yourself and where you come from, what you got you to where you are, and just we want to hear all about you. So welcome, Lindsey.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I am a junior at NC State, and I am working with the Webb telescope this summer, as you just heard. I focus on risk management, and at NC State, I'm studying aerospace engineering. Some of my interests, I'm really interested in hiking and traveling. I took a trip to Rwanda this past spring where I worked on engineering outreach. And I'm also really interested in coffee. I worked as a Starbucks barista for 2 years, and that became a passion of mine. And I'm also very interested in soccer, and that was a really great part of my life growing up. Next slide. So a little bit about my journey. As I just mentioned, soccer was a huge part of my life growing up, especially in middle school and high school. And sophomore year was my favorite year of playing. It was kind of my best season, and I really loved it. But at the same time, I really had this developing passion for space and astronomy. I took a class my freshman year of high school. It was environmental science, and I learned a lot about Hubble and the history of the universe. And that really inspired me to sort of pursue a career with working with space. So I went to NASA Kennedy Space Center during this spring break of my sophomore year. And that's when I really got into engineering. I learned about the space shuttle and how the engineers kind of conceptualized that as something that could launch like a rocket, but come down like a plane. And I really loved the ingenuity and beauty of that solution. And I wanted to work on things like that in the future where I could develop solutions and that were really creative to solve these really complex problems. So that summer, I went to an aerospace engineering camp at NC State, and I fell even more in love with engineering. I learned so much when I was there, and I met some really amazing people. And at that point, I really knew I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to work for NASA one day. Right after that happened, I came back and I had my second knee surgery of my high school experience. So freshman year, I dislocated my knee. And then sophomore year, after I had played 2 more seasons, I dislocated my knee again and tore my ligament. So I had a lot of time after that surgery, right after that camp, where I could reflect on my future and what I really wanted to do going forward. And as much as I loved soccer, I made a really hard decision to stop playing. And it was really rough. I was really sad not going forward, but I thought it was the best decision for my health, my knees, and just my future. I didn't know how much longer I was going to play soccer anyways. So I'd still go to games, but I had this amazing gift of free time where I was able to explore a lot of my other interests and passions and delve into different opportunities I never had the time to experience. So I started an astronomy club at my school. I joined Science Olympiad, which I never had the time to do. I got a job as a barista, really loved making coffee, and I got really into French club. So after developing all these new interests, I decided to go to NC State with a great group of students from my university, my high school. And I was going to study aerospace engineering. And some of my best friends at NC State are still the people I met at the aerospace engineering camp 4 years ago. And if you could go to the last slide. So this is a little bit about my internship experience. I applied to a NASA internship this past spring after my research advisor sort of encouraged me to do so. And I was so excited when I learned about the Webb internship project because it really united the 2 things that I loved about NASA, the astronomy, astrophysics side with the engineering side. So I was really super excited that they had this opportunity and I could combine my passions in it. And I was luckily selected. It was an amazing opportunity and I've loved every minute of it. I've worked with an incredible team of people this summer and everybody at NASA has been incredibly supportive and just ready to help me learn and grow and develop as a person. And I'm incredibly grateful to my intern team that I've worked with. They've been so supportive and I think we've really meshed well together. I've done some work I'm really proud of and I'm really excited to see where my future takes me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Lindsey. There's so many interesting things that I want to go back to and ask you about. I was like, ooh, Africa, Astronomy Club. Like there's some things I want to ask you about. But before we get to the questions from our audience and things that sparked my interest as you were talking. We're going to go ahead and talk to the rest of our interns. So if anybody that's watching today has questions and like me, things interest me and I want to add a question, go ahead and drop that in the chat box. And then once we've gone through and introduced all of our interns, we'll go back and field some of your questions. So thanks again, Lindsey. And the next intern that we have on deck is Drew Olson. So welcome, Drew, to the show.
Hi, I'm Andrew Olson. I'm a senior at West Virginia University. I'm studying mechanical and aerospace engineering. A little bit about me. A lot of my hobbies center around being outside. I love hiking and I love fishing. Recently, I've gotten really into 3D printing. Before I actually started this internship at NASA, I spent the fall and the spring semester working in a research lab at school, studying 3D printing of non-traditional materials. I really like to cook. I love to travel and experience different cultures and try new foods. Next slide, please. So the photo on the left was me when I was 4 or 5 years old. I've always been interested in aviation and space. I grew up with my parents taking me to air shows, so I always dreamt of one day being a fighter pilot or an astronaut like most kids do. I played lacrosse through middle school and high school. I think this is where I learned the most about teamwork and how important it is to success and how rewarding it is to be on a winning team. The photo there in the middle is my senior year of high school. We won the state championship. Engineering is the same way to me. It's almost impossible to be a successful engineer without knowing how to be a good team player. The photo on the right there is part of our engineering campus at West Virginia. And WVU and NASA actually have a pretty long history with each other. The Katherine Johnson IV&V facility was launched in '93, partnered with West Virginia, so they do a lot of work together. In my 3 years of studying engineering here, I've learned a lot, but some of the most important lessons I've learned is that there's a lot more to engineering than just doing well in your courses. It's important to connect with other students and find your passions. That way you can join clubs or do research about these things, and it not only helps you learn, but it also prevents you from burning yourself out by working too hard. Engineering isn't all about being good at math and physics. It's really about being a well-rounded individual who can handle diversity and adapt to any situation or any problem that you may encounter. All these lessons and experiences so far have led me to this internship at NASA. Next slide, please. So obviously this summer's class of interns experience looks pretty different than those in the past. Due to the COVID pandemic, we've had to work 100% remotely. On the top left there is a screenshot from one of our meetings that we have. We generally met once or twice a day over Microsoft Teams to either discuss different topics of the mission or just asking each other for input on our projects. Being limited to this digital communication introduced some new obstacles for the job. No longer could we just walk down a hallway and knock on an office door to get a question answered. But even though it's different, we were still able to utilize the tools that we had at hand to communicate efficiently and still get the job done well. The photo on the bottom right there is a snapshot of my desk of what it looks like when it's actually organized. A lot of my work included having multiple spreadsheets or technical reports open and pulling data from those and organizing them somewhere else. So having 2 monitors really helps streamline that process. And although this internship isn't what most of us had in mind, having to do it from home and not being able to be in the office and talk to each other all the time, the experience that those at NASA have been able to provide us with was truly second to none. And I have no doubt that it's not only helped me grow as an engineer, but also as a person. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Drew. That was awesome. I can't wait to talk to you more about your 3D printing. I'm sure that sparked some interest too with the middle school and high school students. Let's see, we've got Tina. I think you're next on deck. So welcome, Tina Beck. And she's actually from Florida like I am. So we're here in sunny Florida together. So Tina, why don't you share some more about your life experiences and how you got to the NASA internships with us?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Tina Beck, and I'm a junior at UCF studying astrophysics and astronomy. I am also a non-traditional student as well as a Webb intern. And I grew up in Central Florida watching shuttle launches with my dad, so I've had a fascination with space and science since I was a kid. And due to that, I've also dreamed of working for NASA for as long as I can remember, and I am super thrilled to be here. So on the next slide, we can get a taste of some of my hobbies. So aside from loving all things space, I deeply enjoy hiking and roller skating and video games. So when I'm not doing schoolwork or research, I try to spend as much time as possible outside. But with that being said, I also try to make space for exploring new worlds through gaming. And just like just about everybody else in quarantine, I've spent plenty of time creating my own island in Animal Crossing, which are the photos you see in the center, complete with my very own NASA Space Center. And aside from being super fun and immersive, video games are actually a great gateway to STEM, and they're a key part in my journey and what set me on my STEM path. So working with the wonders of space and becoming an astrophysicist when I was younger felt really outside of the realm of possibilities, but becoming a programmer and creating video games seemed a little bit more concrete and tangible goal. So that's actually the direction that I started in. So if you pull up the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what it means to be a non-traditional student. So I wasn't fresh out of high school when I was jumping into college to study programming. And so I attended as a non-traditional student. So non-traditional students are generally students like me who aren't jumping in right after high school. They might have to work full time. They're considered financially independent. They might have kids or dependents or have a GED instead of a high school diploma. And while there's definitely some difficulties there, so for me, I was a little bit older than some of the other students. I had to work full time. I had some pretty intense financial difficulties and could only take a couple classes at a time. So while there are difficulties there, there's definitely some benefits to that too. Being an adult student, I've spent a lot of time working different jobs and in different job environments. So I've come to know myself and how I learn really well. And I feel like that was a very beneficial tool for me to have. And also because of that, I have a great appreciation for all of my classes and thoroughly enjoyed them all, especially the math classes, believe it or not. So I actually ended up attending a local state college to get my AS degree in computer programming. I chose the state college because the class sizes are smaller, the classes are a little bit cheaper, which is great for non-traditional students, but also good for traditional students as well. During my programming internship, or not internship, but during my programming coursework, I really fell in love with STEM and I absolutely needed to know more. So after I completed my AS degree in computer programming, I started my AA in physics and I've loved every minute of it. And I graduated last spring and secured a transfer scholarship to UCF starting this fall, and I can't wait to continue my non-traditional journey there. Another facet of being a non-traditional student meant that my resume didn't feel quite as competitive as some of the other applications. So I didn't have the volunteer hours or the engagement in programs and extracurriculars that a lot of applicants use to bolster theirs. So instead, what I do have is I have passion, I have drive. So I chose to use that as my focus in my NASA internship. And despite not having a perfect application, it was that passion and perseverance that really helped me be chosen for a NASA internship. So even if you're not in the most ideal situation, don't let that deter you from jumping for what you want. So, and then the time comes and I get the offer, and I don't think I've ever been quite so excited in my entire life. I got a NASA internship working on the Webb telescope. I couldn't believe it, and honestly, sometimes I still can't. So this summer, I've spent the time attending webinars, getting to know my fellow interns, researching the forefront of star formation and science and how Webb is going to be pushing the boundaries of that research. So an average day for us consists of meetings with the team and mentor, combing through astronomy databases and web reference material, and of course, occasionally chit-chatting with my favorite office mate, my dog. So working remotely has definitely been challenging in some respects and beneficial in others. So while instead of meeting face-to-face, we do have online meetings, but not being bound to headquarters means that we have a little bit more freedom in choosing when we work and where we work. And we also have the opportunity to engage with other centers and scientists and other interns that we wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to meet with. And honestly, that's been my favorite part of this whole experience, is being able to meet the people of NASA and experience the culture of NASA. And everybody that is welcome from all walks of life, and they're appreciated, and we all have a common goal of learning, growing, and helping others to succeed. So even during quarantine, my time with NASA has been absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to come back for another internship.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Tina. You have a great story, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that could probably relate, where they feel kind of maybe have passed that window where they could have interned somewhere, and you've shown that you can actually still go out there and pursue your dreams no matter where you are in your life. So thank you for sharing that story with us. While you were talking, lots of great questions have been coming in. So I want to encourage our audience to keep those questions coming. I will get those questions out to our interns and get them answered for you. So don't worry. We will get to those. But the next person on our list to talk to today is Dakota. So Dakota, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So, hello, everybody. My name is Dakota Tyler, and I just recently graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a double bachelor's in physics and astrophysics. So I graduated in the fall, and this spring I had a chance to do an internship at Goddard Space Flight Center, which got cut a little bit short due to the quarantine situation. But it was a great chance for me to learn, and I'm going to UCLA to study astrophysics, specifically exoplanets, in graduate school this fall. Next slide, please. So talk a little bit about my interests. You see there, I have a dog. So my dog is my dog. That's my dog. And we like to go hiking a lot. You know, you can see some, these are some pictures from Colorado and I believe maybe Utah. And I like to go hiking. That's something that was not impeded at all by quarantine because you can get a lot of social distancing out in nature. I'm really interested in sports. I used to play football actually. I'm a huge Celtics fan and Chargers fan, so I'm really interested. I'm glad that the NBA games came back. But I'm also really interested in astronomy, and that's what I want to talk about next on this next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am today. Because I am also a non-traditional student, like Tina, who just went before me. So as I said, I played football in high school, and I focused on sports. I was, more or less a typical, athlete that wasn't too focused on academics. And eventually, I got injured. I stopped playing, and I couldn't play anymore. I graduated, and I got a degree in community and leadership development. But I couldn't play anymore. And that's like always what I was passionate about. And I knew that for me personally, I couldn't do anything that I wasn't like passionate about. I have to be passionate about my job. I have to do something that kind of fills me up and gives me something excited to live for. And I started to think about, what is that for me? And space was always something that was like vaguely interesting because you don't know, we don't know anything about it. We live on Earth. But there's like an infinite number of stars, an infinite number of planets and possibilities, ways, different formations, different combinations. And I started to look into what it would take to become an astronomer. And it takes a kind of extensive background in math and physics. And like I said, I had a background in football. So actually didn't have to do much math or chemistry or anything like that on the football field. So I had to start from the very beginning. I went to a community college near my hometown, and I worked on like very basic math courses. I took like algebra, trigonometry courses during the day, and I worked at FedEx at night. And I did that for a while, and it was a real grind. But eventually, I got to the point when I could enroll at University of Cincinnati as a physics major, and I started to get into research. I found a great mentor, some students there who were upperclassmen who were doing what I wanted to do. And I really probed them. I clinged on to them and tried to pull every bit of information from them that I could about the proper moves to make kind of to be able to get to do what they're doing and ultimately to be able to do what I want to do and get into grad school and do real astronomy research. So I started doing research there and I started presenting it at certain things. Here's a picture of me at AAS conference 2 years ago, which was in Seattle. And I presented my first research project, my undergrad research project. And then I got a REU at Harvard the following summer, which is last summer. And it was the first time I got to do actual exoplanet research. Then I presented that several times as well, including the AAS conference this past winter, which was in Hawaii, which was awesome. But it was just basically me going on this journey and trying to do exactly what I'm passionate about and find the people who could, help me to get there. So when I ended up graduating, I graduated a semester early, and that's when I applied for the internship at Goddard Space Flight Center. And I was like, yeah, like, why not? That would be a great transition into grad school, give me some real experience, get to work at NASA. And I mean, I didn't know if it was like a long shot that I was gonna get it or not, because I don't really know what the applicant pool looks like or anything like that. But I got it and I went, and it was more laid back. Like, these are normal people. These are scientists, like just like me. They're interested in this. They're passionate about this. People from all different walks of life. People who went back to school, who never stopped going to school, like so many different combinations. And, now I'm going to be going and working on my PhD at UCLA studying exoplanets, which is exactly what I've always wanted to do. So this internship has been great for me. As I said, I'm working on the exoplanet side of James Webb, and these are, exoplanets. To me, it's the most interesting thing that we could possibly study. So I guess, and if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience this summer. So as everybody said, all my Webb interns have said before, it was kind of weird because nobody's ever done this before. Like, nobody just sits in their house all day, like for months and months and months, and just tries to like read papers on their own and stuff. So we found ways to connect. We have like group chats. We have some of the interns work super late at night, and we would like be messaging each other back and forth, like, what's going on? Why are you working on this at 3 a.m.? What were you guys doing? And I don't know, we just found ways to, make it fun, found ways to connect. And we did get to meet a lot of people that we wouldn't have gotten to meet if everything was just in person, which was really nice because we all work on something different. We've got engineers, we've got galactic astronomers, we've got exoplanet astronomers. So we got to meet people who, specialized in what we are interested in, but also other things. Like, I came into this knowing literally nothing about engineering. Like, I had no idea how they were putting Webb. I didn't know. Like, I just knew that one day it was going to do amazing science. And it was nice to be able to kind of see that, because NASA employs so many different people. There's so many different jobs. It's not just astronomers. It's not just programmers. It's not just engineers. There's communications teams like we have right here, and I think that there's something actually probably for everybody. If you have an interest in NASA, there's like some role there that you could probably fill. So my
That's good, Dakota. Yeah. There was a question actually that came up, like, I think it was, do NASA need people in medicine or chemistry or biology? And I think you covered that question. There is something for everybody, because every center is like a little city. So if you think about what's needed in a city, the people in your neighborhood, there are people that work in the post office, people that work with the animals and the biology on center. So there is just something for everybody. I think you covered that very well. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Dakota. I know I was taking notes, like there's some other things I want to prod you about, like your trip to Hawaii. But before we get to those other questions, I'd like to introduce everyone to Jillian, and she can share her story with us. So thanks again, Dakota, and welcome, Jillian.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Just a little bit about me. I just graduated from the University of Florida, go Gators, last May, and I got my bachelor's in astrophysics. A little bit of my hobbies. I love to stargaze with my telescope that I have. I have seen the moon, Saturn, and Jupiter and four of its moons. And it's a great way to connect with other people, because whenever somebody sees a telescope out on a clear night, they're going to want to take a look through it. So it's a really fun way to hang out with friends and get to know the people. You can also get started stargazing with a good set of binoculars, because I know Jupiter and Saturn, and of course the moon, are great targets because they're actually really easy to see with a good pair of binoculars. So if anybody wants to get started on it, definitely go ahead and look into that. I also really enjoy painting. It's a nice creative outlet away from, especially during college, away from the math and physics heavy classes that I had. So it was a good break, just especially during exam week. I think I painted a whole lot during this past exam week. But I also painted my graduation cap in that picture on the right. and the words on it are Latin. They say per aspera ad astra, and it means through hardships to the stars, because college is hard, and I majored in astrophysics, so I thought it was very fitting. I also don't have a picture of it for some reason, but I swear in high school I did Taekwondo as another one of my extracurriculars that was not directly related to math or physics. So that was actually really fun. I can't believe I didn't have any pictures of it, so you might think I'm lying to you, but I promise I did Taekwondo. If you go to that next slide, I can talk a little bit about how I've been interested in astronomy for forever. I grew up in South Florida as well, so I got to watch the shuttle launch a lot through the 2000s as a kid, and that has always been super interesting to me. In that picture on the left, when I was still in school, I drove a few hours south of Gainesville to watch the SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch in 2018. And I think I'm on some random bridge on the side of the road in Melbourne Beach, but that little tiny building in the background that you see in that picture is actually Kennedy Space Center, from where that rocket launched off. So that was really cool to be able to watch it from that distance and hear it launch, and it was just a really cool experience. That picture in the middle is at an observatory in Colorado. I took a family trip to Colorado, and we just Googled observatories around me and found a random one that we could look through that night because it was a pretty clear night. And it was such a cool coincidence because that telescope that I'm posing with is actually the telescope that NASA used to determine that the moon had a safe surface to land on. Just out of coincidence, I had gone to that observatory and been able to see that. So I very much nerded out, and I said to my dad, please take a picture of me. In that picture on the right, I took pretty much just a grown-up field trip to Kennedy Space Center with a club at UF that I was a part of called the Astronomy and Astrophysics Society. And we just planned it all together to caravan down there and just have a nice, fun day at Kennedy Space Center, away from all our classes, away from all the hard stuff that we had to do. So it was a really nice grown-up field trip. I did take normal elementary school kid field trips to Kennedy Space Center a lot because it's a very close drive to us. If you go ahead to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about my internship as well as just them in general. Internships are a really good way to get exposure to the career that you're interested in. So apply for any of them that sound even remotely interesting. Something I had to learn is even if you end up changing your mind about your future career or just not liking that experience that you had, that's okay, because it's just as important to find out what you don't like as well as what you do like. And of course, always ask questions, because when you're an intern, people expect you to have questions. You're there to learn more, and no one expects you to know everything all at once. And I definitely have learned quite a whole lot at my NASA internship. So be curious and ask questions, because it's the most valuable thing you can do once you get that internship. And specifically for me, during my NASA internship, I got to do a lot of reading with research articles and just astronomy, like telescope proposals. You can see that on the next slide. I think I have a picture. Yep, my selfie with my best friend, my work laptop through the summer, with one of the articles pulled up that I definitely did a lot of reading on about the first stars in the universe, because for my internship, I focused on the science goal that Webb has called First Light and Reionization. And that's just kind of looking at what the early universe looked like and how everything formed and what were the first stars and galaxies like. And that little model, I have it here with me as well, of the James Webb Space Telescope, was a nice work break to be able to build it in between all my reading, lots and lots of reading and writing. So that's a little bit about me. I have really loved this internship. I was shocked to get it because, you know, during my senior year at UF, you know, getting up on graduating, I had been applying and sending out my resume for so long. And I kept getting rejection in my email and everything. And the one single positive response I got was from NASA. So I was shocked when they sent me that email and wanted to set up an interview. So if I could give any one piece of advice, it would be frame those rejection letters, like keep those rejection letters and use them to fuel your applications for bigger and better things, because you never know, you might end up working for NASA.
That's super good advice, Jillian. And I really hope that the students that are watching take that to heart, because you hardly ever get a yes on your first try. I think on anything that you want to do, you just have to keep pushing. And I think that's really sage advice for everybody that's watching. And I also appreciate you sharing with the students what you're currently working on. So all the interns that you're hearing from today are working on the Webb telescope. So Jillian is part of the science aspect and what the purpose of the Webb telescope is on the science part of things. Dakota, did you want to share what you're working on as far as the science? And then maybe we'll talk to Tina as well with the science. And then maybe we'll go back to the engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm working on is exoplanets. Webb is going to be able to study just about everything in astronomy. But what I'm really interested in is exoplanets, right? So here you can see from this slide, there's a star system that we know about called TRAPPIST-1 system, and it has 7 Earth-like planets. And by Earth-like, we just mean around Earth size. Like, we don't necessarily know how Earth-like it is, in terms of atmosphere or anything like that. But we know that they're Earth size, and we know that some of them are in the habitability zone, or so there's an area that every star has where liquid water can exist. And that is what we call the habitable zone. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, the planet's going to be habitable. We don't know what the atmosphere is like. Maybe it's like Venus, maybe it's like Mars, or maybe it is like Earth. And what Webb is going to be able to do is kind of like probe these atmospheres and tell us what they're like. And that's just for the smaller planets, the terrestrial planets. There's so many different types of exoplanets. There's huge Jupiter-sized planets that are closer to their star than Mercury is to the sun. There's, if you can imagine, a Jupiter going around its star multiple times in a day or something crazy like that. And Webb is going to be able to like investigate all of these systems. So what I was doing was kind of compiling everything that we know about exoplanets to this point and making like a definitive list of the areas, the forefront or the boundary that we have right now, and how Webb is going to push it to the next level. Like, what discoveries do we know that we're going to be able to make with Webb, or like what questions are we going to be able to answer? And there's a ton of them. And every time you learn something new, you also learn that there was like 1,000 questions that you didn't even know to ask yet. One of the really important ones, one of the ones that's most interesting to me, is that the most common planets that we find are these like super Earth and mini Neptune sized planets. So somewhere between the size of Earth and Neptune. And they're the most common planets that we find when we look out, but we don't have them in our own solar system. They're they're 2 planets that are missing from our system. And there's a big question as to like, why is that? Why are we weird, or why are we special, And so, yeah, I was focusing on the exoplanet side. So there's a lot of reading, a lot of interviewing other people, talking to old advisors and getting opinions. And it was a lot of fun. This is what I love to do. I couldn't have thought of a better thing to do this summer.
That's great. Tina, what are you working on with the Webb telescope?
So with Webb, I'm focusing on the topic of how stars form. So the reason why Webb is super crucial in that is that when stars form, it's because there's this big clump of molecular dust, and over time, they get a little bit closer to each other, a little bit closer, and then as they get closer, the gravity starts pulling stuff in, they get denser, they get hotter, and then boom, your star turns on. So the problem with that is this process is surrounded by these molecular clouds of dust. And the reason why Webb is going to be so crucial in this is that Webb is primarily going to see in the infrared. So it has the ability to see through these dense clouds of dust to help answer some of the questions that we don't have answers to. So in star formation specifically, a lot of the ideas and hypothesis that we have is based around modeling, because you can't really see through that. So there's a lot of really intense and detailed computer simulations, but being able to see how binary stars form with each other, or how the protoplanetary disks form around the outside of the star that eventually leads to its own planetary system and delves into the exoplanets that Dakota is focusing on into. The James Webb Space Telescope is going to be absolutely crucial in answering a lot of those questions. So my part of the internship is also doing research and figuring out what the forefront of science is to see how far we've been able to go with the technology we have now. So that way, when Webb is in operation, we're able to make a direct comparison between where we were at before Webb and where we're at with Webb.
So Tina and Dakota, you both had interests already in exoplanets and star formation. So when you applied for an internship, were you able to choose what program you wanted to work on, or did you get accepted as an intern and assigned to a project? That was one of the questions that we had from our students today. What do you think, Tina? Yeah.
So when you go to apply on the NASA internship website, they give you the opportunity to choose different projects that you're interested in. And I think the limit is 15. I chose all 15. I filled up that whole list. And one of those was to work with the James Webb Space Telescope. And then it was during the interview with our mentor, they did a lot of kind of fact-finding questions about us and what our interests were. So within the project, we were able to kind of select what we gravitated more towards. And it just so happened to work out that each of us on the science side had our own kind of interests in the 4 different science themes of the Webb telescope, which is the first light and reionization, which is Jillian's theme, exoplanets, which is Dakota's, and then mine, which is star formation, and then another one, which we didn't have a 4th intern, but that's the assembly of galaxies over time. So it's kind of a yes and no. We chose the program, or the program chose us, but then we got to choose what we wanted within the program.
Okay. We had another question about the way that the telescope is structured, what it looks like. So we actually have 2 engineering students with us today, Drew and Lindsey. So Lindsey, can you address the why the Webb telescope looks the way it does?
Yeah, definitely. So it has this sort of hexagon structure because it needs to be really large. Infrared telescopes, since they see in longer wavelengths of light, they have to have a bigger diameter to be able to sense the light to the sensitivity that we need to. And then on top of that, it needs this sun shield at the bottom because infrared, if you have any heat, it interferes with your reading and picking up infrared signals. So the sun shield blocks all of the sun's light and light from the earth so that it doesn't interfere. And so you have the hot side of the telescope, which is almost near boiling temperatures, and the cold side, which is somewhat close to absolute zero. It gets pretty chilly down there. And then you have to have it fold up, which is the really interesting part because it's going in an Ariane 5 rocket, and that's only so big, and we can't fit a telescope big enough to do what we want Webb to do in that sort of rocket. So it has this ability to deploy its mirrors and deploy its sun shield and just fold up almost like origami, and it's really beautiful the way it does it, but it also does influence the risk of the mission because we have to have all these little deployments and components work successfully when it's launched, and we're not going to be able to access it and fix it like we would with Hubble. Once it's up there, and we have little we can do to stop it or intervene.
Awesome. Drew, can you explain a little bit about what you're doing as far as the engineering side of the Webb project?
Yeah, so Lindsey and I are focusing on the risk management of the mission. So every mission will have a set of accepted risks that we know something can go wrong, but we can only mitigate it to a certain point, whether that's extra lubrication, extra care when we're handling and installing it. And an issue that Webb had is these risks were kind of all over the place. They were in certain databases, all the background information wasn't there. So what we focused on is trying to find as deep info as we can on different databases and pulling that information out and centralizing it in one document. So anyone can come back and look at that document and say, okay, here's the risk, here's the main points of it, and here's what can go wrong. And the consequences and the likelihood were big parts of that risk as well.
All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started with some of our questions because we've had quite a few come in. So one of our first questions that was introduced to us was, did any of the interns previously have NASA or space work experience or participate in a summer program before joining as an intern at NASA? So I'm just going to punt that off to Lindsey, because you already talked a little bit about an astronomy club that you had started. So you might be a good resource to answer that question for us.
For sure, yeah. So a lot of my experience in terms of space stuff actually came from high school with that aerospace engineering camp I attended in high school. I developed an astronomy club at my school, and that was a really great way to be involved with space stuff, especially after my school had our astronomy teacher leave. So to sort of fill that gap, I sort of led this area where we could all come together and learn about space together. And those were really nice venues for doing that. Same with Science Olympiad. I would be involved in the astronomy events, and I was big into all that stuff. In college, I did less sort of focused on space things. I joined High-Powered Rocketry Club at my school, and it was really amazing. They're a really amazing organization, but I ended up getting really busy as things came up. And so freshman year was just me sort of trying to find my way. And then sophomore year, I got really into research, and I focus on engineering design theory sort of in my research. And that's what really helped me get into the risk management with Webb, because I focus on sort of designing around uncertainty, which is inherently what risks are. So I had sort of a more general background with systems and research and design, and I was able to apply that really well here. And I hadn't had any actual summer experience other than part-time jobs. So it ended up working pretty well with the background I had.
Well, and you went to Africa, right? And you taught engineering to students out there. Is that what you were doing? So you're getting students excited about engineering?
Yeah, exactly. So we have this program at our school called Alternative Service Break, and you get to go to somewhere across the world to do this service project, but also really learn about the culture of different places. And you just learn so much from these experiences yourself too. So we have this one we take every year to Rwanda, and we work with students of all different ages. This year we focused on primary schools, primary age children. And so we do engineering activities with them. We read stories about engineering. I think we read like Rosie Revere, the engineer, and we get students really excited about STEM. And it was really amazing because we had students who said we taught them a new way of thinking with engineering, this new way of problem solving and kind of being able to figure out problems on their own and in their own lives. So it was really inspiring to me, and I learned so much from going there as well.
Perfect. All right, next question. What made you feel as though you stood out among the intern pool? So I think I'm going to kick that one to Jillian and see what she thinks. What stood out, do you think, in your application among the others?
So that's a great question, because I feel like if you're applying for an internship to NASA, you are a very talented and intelligent individual. So it's hard to kind of get your application to be able to stand out to be one that's selected, at least for an interview. And I think personally, for me, I got involved in research during my very last semester at UF. And that research was actually on the James Webb Space Telescope. I worked with Dr. Gonzalez at UF to simulate and produce simulated data from the telescope. So it hasn't launched yet, so you can't actually get the data. But what you can do is you can run computer programs to kind of fake the data and be able to see what you can get from it, so that you can say, okay, this is what we can get from this data. Here's a proposal that I want to submit to NASA to be able to look through the telescope. And I think that research experience that I had on the Webb telescope actually gave me that edge to get this internship, because when Tina was mentioning you can select different different specific internships on the website where you apply, I definitely selected the Webb telescope just kind of as a dream, like, oh, wow, that would be so cool. And then they got back to me, of course, and I definitely think 100% that research experience that I had gave me that edge to make them say, oh, let's definitely talk to this one. She sounds like she knows what she's doing, which I'm trying to figure that out. So I think.
And now you pinch yourself every day, because you are actually working on the Webb
oh my gosh,
telescope.
every day.
And everybody's nodding their heads over there.
Yeah,
They're
right?
like, yeah, daily we pinch ourselves.
For sure.
All right, the next question, Dakota, I'm going to go ahead and field to you. It comes from a high school student who's looking to apply for an internship next summer. What kind of skills and experiences does NASA look for in younger applicants like me? So what should they put in their resume as far as their experiences go?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's possible any type of previous experience doing research or anything that's related would definitely be important, right? So, at your high school, they're not obviously expecting you to, have like advanced college work, coursework or experience that's beyond what you could do in high school. But you can demonstrate that you have taken certain classes, right? You can demonstrate a passion that you have in engineering or whatever it is that you're, whatever type of internship that you're applying for. And that's going to make you stand out. Like NASA wants people who are like fired up about whatever it is that they're trying to do. And you have to get started somewhere, right? And if you haven't had, a lot of maybe relevant experience, you want it, right? You want it. You're really excited about it, and you can definitely demonstrate that in an application. You can demonstrate that you have, taken advantage of whatever resources were available to you, and that you're working to develop the necessary skill set, and you have been. So I would definitely say that you should focus on your passion for this thing if you haven't had maybe a whole lot of relevant work experience.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Dakota. Drew, I think the next question would be good for you. Back to clubs. What clubs would you recommend a high school student to look into? So that might help bolster your resume, like Dakota was saying, when they're applying for internships. So what kind of clubs do you think students should be looking for?
So I think any club related to STEM would be relevant for NASA. And the biggest thing is don't join a club just to put it on your resume. Otherwise, you'll go to a meeting and you'll get bored and you'll stop showing up, and it's just not worth it. You need to find something that you actually care about and become involved in the club. See if there's leadership positions, or if the club is available to travel to a conference or meet up with other clubs. Just again, it's really just about what you're passionate about, and just don't do it for a resume booster.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned being on an engineering team and how that taught you a lot about teamwork. So maybe you can talk to that a little bit as well for the students.
Part of it, there's never going to be a single engineer that knows it all. No matter how smart you think you are, nobody knows it all. So the reason engineering is so crucial to be on a team is that just this summer, with Lindsey and I both working on the same thing, if I didn't know something, there's a good chance that she knew it, or vice versa. So it's always good to have differing views on an approach to a problem. Because if you don't think you know how to solve a problem, there's a good chance that someone else does, or they can help you get on the right path to it.
Okay. I think the next question we're going to just hand off to Tina, and it's pretty basic, but you might be able to talk more about, it's how long are internships usually? So you could talk to even going into more like Dakota's done more than one,
So there's generally two types of internships at NASA. So there's the Pathways internships. Those are a little bit more intense because you go straight from getting like a college level internship that you interact with all the way until you graduate, and then that gets you placement into a job. And so that's a very specific type of internship, and it has its own very specific application process. It's more like applying for a regular job. The internships that we are in, we're out of the Office of STEM Engagement, and through that, they're usually like through the term. So there's a spring, summer, and fall term. And so it takes up that period of time, and you're able to do, I believe, up to 3 of those. So you can do 3 different internships through the Office of STEM Engagement. And you can go back. I plan on reapplying, and I'm sure that some of my fellow interns here also intend on reapplying. So there's definitely different options, and through each of the terms, they've got different projects at different centers, working on different things. And like Dakota said, they accept everybody. So whether you're in STEM or communications or health or art even, and there's all sorts of different opportunities available for you for sure.
Perfect. Thanks for telling us about the program, Tina. Lindsey, I think the next question would be good for you because you're our engineering student. We had a question from a mining engineer student, if there would be opportunities for them at NASA.
I think definitely yes. You just have to find the ways you can apply what you know to a NASA career. And there's really so many ways to do that. because engineering, as much as the different fields of it are different, the skills and the problem solving that are at the core of engineering are really transferable to different fields. And even some of the coursework does overlap. So I definitely encourage you to check out NASA internships. They have so many pages and pages of internships available, and just try to find ones that you would tailor to what you kind of have learned about in your own experiences. And even if you have extracurricular experiences that sort of kind of tie into a different kind of engineering, or you'd be surprised at just the very niche things that NASA has. I don't know particularly about mining, but I know there's all sorts of things about going to the moon and bringing back samples of different things and all sorts of stuff. So you just gotta take a look, and I know you'll be able to find something.
Thank you, Lindsey. We had a question about what's the best piece of advice you've gotten from a mentor? And I think I'll let Drew answer that question.
So for me, what I think the best piece of advice I've ever got is growing up, my dad always told me, do a job right and do it right the first time. And it sounds simple. And normally when he was telling me that, it was because I pick up all the sticks in the yard before he mowed the yard. But I think it's really relevant to engineering, and especially on this risk management side, because the Webb telescope is a $10 billion project. And if engineers or risk engineers don't do their job right the first time, you don't get a second chance. So if you make a mistake, it could get really expensive really fast.
That is a really good piece of advice. I think everybody should be listening to that today. Make sure you do it right. Yeah. We might have time for one more question. So the question is, what kind of skills, knowledge, and experience do applicants for NASA internships need? So I think maybe everybody can put in one or two words there. So what are some qualities that do you think that NASA is looking for? So we'll start with the order that we went in today. So Lindsey's first, and then Drew.
Definitely passion, enthusiasm, and excitement. I think those are the biggest things. Just make sure you're really excited about what you're doing, and that you're just passionate about the work you're going to do at NASA.
Okay, Drew?
I think having a niche thing that you're really into, it kind of ties back into the past, but it also makes you very marketable. Like if you're really good at this one thing, NASA's kind of the head of the field in what they do. So they want those people that are really good at what they do. And so finding that one thing you're passionate about and good at can definitely make NASA want you more.
Awesome. All right, Tina, I think you were next.
So again, I definitely think that the enthusiasm really makes a huge difference, as well as a willingness to learn, right? Be open to new experiences and trying new things, and maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone and just going for it, right? So that willingness to step out is really, really advantageous.
That's great. And Dakota?
So kind of tying together what everybody has just said before me, ways that you can, demonstrate this passion, demonstrate a willingness to learn and stuff like that, is to figure out what other things that you can be doing in the meantime, whether it is joining a club, or maybe you want to start your own club, or whether it's volunteering if you're into astronomy at a local observatory, or a museum or something like that. But there's a lot of ways that you can kind of live out that passion in ways that can bolster up your resume for an application to NASA.
Perfect. And then last, Jillian.
So I think it's really important, in addition to all of these great things, to make yourself as a person diverse. So what I mean by that is you're not only what's on your resume. So definitely join clubs that aren't STEM. Maybe you want to join a film club where you guys watch whatever movie of the week and then you guys discuss it after, or an art club, or getting involved in some kind of hobby that is not necessarily related to what you want to do as a career. Because even if people love their career, like I love space, I have such a passion for it, but I can still get burnt out from it if I do it as a job 40 hours a week. So definitely make sure that you have hobbies and other things that you enjoy besides STEM related activities. Especially even when you're applying for a job, people want to know that you're human. What's on your resume is very important, of course. But when you have these other skills and these other hobbies, it makes you relatable and it makes you approachable. So definitely get involved in something that is not always directly related to your career.
I think that's great advice. And I see everybody's agreeing. They're all nodding their heads. So definitely. Well, I want to thank you all for coming today. And it was really good to meet you. I probably never would have had it not been for the pandemic. So I wish you all the best of luck in your careers in the future. And I hope you stay in touch. And thank you for encouraging and giving such great advice to our students today. So I want to tell the students about their mission, what their mission will be for this episode. So I want to encourage you to go to the NASA's intern website, the intern.nasa.gov. And then I want you to share with us on social media, #NextGenSTEM, what you learned today or what motivated you to maybe pursue a career at NASA, or what you want to do, or maybe you got some new ideas today. So we want to hear about those ideas. So share that on social media, #NextGenSTEM. And then our next episode will be next week on Thursday. And we're going to talk with the chief of the Special Projects Office out of Wallops Island, and his name is Dave Wilcox. So that'll be Thursday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So thanks again for joining us on NASA STEM Stars, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.